to double down on something that you've mentioned. Obviously, we mentioned existence and the purpose of existence and so on. What are your thoughts on the matter? Do you think there is a grand purpose of our existence? Do you think there's a purpose behind what we are and what we do? Or would you say that from an analytical standpoint, we are just a combination of particles that just occurred in this sort of...
Yeah. So that can be. Because everything in this universe, of course, there's specific rules and laws, and it can, and every time somebody says like, oh, this or that breaks the laws of physics, no, it broke your understanding of the laws of physics, but not laws of physics. Laws of physics cannot be broken. Yeah, that's why they're the laws, right? So everything in this universe looks like it's very logical, and everything is the size and the speed as it should be. And when you start measuring things, it all just makes sense and it's logical. So it's almost like this is intelligently designed or built, right? And so you can tell that this universe is not an accidental event. Right? Now, as for us, what we're doing here, and what our purpose is, well, nobody knows the answer to that. However, we can have all kind of ideas, or I guess suggestions, speculations. That's the word I'm looking for. You can have speculations, but I'm going to pick the speculation that is the most practical, right? Because I can come up with theories that are useless, but I'm going to go with a theory that's, to me, is practical, because at least it has practical application and it does something, right? So imagine this: are we completely just meat puppets, and in a carbon-based life, and we just happen to have this intelligence? I doubt that. I did have near-death experiences, so I had actual situations when I perceived three-dimensional space from the outside. So I had experiences that was unalienable for me now. So I've been on the other side, right? And what happened, I realized that I was aware of myself. I was aware that I was dying, and so the whole process. And I started meditation and the path of yoga when I was 12 years old. That was my first out-of-body experience. That's why I started it. I wanted to research like what happened, right? So that kind of launched me on this Eastern philosophy and search for yogis. And I lived with monks, and seek out yogis and everybody. I meditated to people that can do things that are unexplainable, and that was my life path. It just, and I didn't talk about that much up until now, because I think the world is changing massively, and there are more and more people interested. And it's the same thing like UFOs. 20 years ago, I said, well, I had a close encounter. People go like, you're crazy. Now the military is talking about it. And NASA started to research it, or they just tell it that now they're researching it, right? But so the conversation is not in the open. So I think there are more and more people are actually realizing and interested in this. But so my perception was that I see where both in meditation, when you properly meditate, is you get to this self-realization where you are watching your mind and your body, but then who's the watcher? Because that's the meditation. The reason meditation is difficult for Westerners is because people made it difficult. Because if I told you what meditation is in 5 sentences, then I can't sell it to you, right? But if I wrote a difficult to understand book and a course, then I can. But actually, meditation is very simple. Meditation process is this idea that you have a voice in your head that's talked to you in whole life, a narrator. The voice in your head. Did I close the garage door? Did I do this? Did I that voice? We all equate ourselves. That's us talking to ourselves, right?
Yeah.
Once you start meditating and you say, okay, here's the goal. Meditate and try to not engage in a conversation with that voice. Try to silence it. This is the whole goal of meditation, right? And I'm going to tell you the technical aspect of why this is possible. It is possible. I'm going to demonstrate it to you. I'm going to point at various objects in this room and tell me what they are, right?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do this.
That's a paper, guitar, sofa, ceiling, floor.
And so what's going to happen, your perception, you can see and perceive what I'm pointing at, but your language can't catch up. Because that part of your brain takes a moment. The hard drive has to search for the concept, the word, and all what you know about it, right? So if you start moving your attention, and attention is interesting because you can look at me but concentrate on him, right?
Yeah.
And you can totally focus on him. So what focused on him? Your attention. So that is a thing you can move around, right?
Wow.
Okay, now take this attention that you can move it around. And now some people meditate on chakras, people meditate on sound, people meditate on mantras and mantras of sounds, and the various paintings like those Buddhist they call the tankas that are on the wall. That's the point, that they're really intricate. So you concentrate on various parts of that painting, and that's why it's so complicated. Because the point is that you're moving your attention faster, faster than your mind can catch up. And as long as you're doing it, you can't formulate a word.
Wow.
Because your mind cannot access the hard drive. And, if I showed you an apple, you're going to say, apple, you already know how it tastes like, you know everything about apple.
Processing it.
Yes. But if I somehow get in between your processing and your perception, and I keep staying there, and I keep moving this attention, your mind is incapable of catching up. It can't formulate the word. So it's silence because it can't say anything. And you keep doing that, and you keep moving. And all of a sudden it becomes a game. It's almost like you're boxing. And you're not punching back. You don't want to engage with your mind. You just kind of like, you're just docking, right? Yeah. And then comes this experience. It's a very powerful experience in meditation process called self-realization. When you realize this dualism, which you come to this idea like, hold on for a second. I'm watching my mind trying to talk to me.
Yeah.
Then who am I? And that is a very powerful moment when it actually happens. Like, whoa, you have a full-on spiritual experience. Like you just realize that me, the being that drives this meat puppet, and the mind is not the same.
Have you experienced that?
Yes. This is my life path. This is what I do. And so that's what meditation is. That's what that's the path. That's where you're gonna get that. But this is the basic level. From here you can climb. This, because look, people say like this idea popped in my mind. No, it didn't. So your mind processing, the thought cannot be interrupted. It's going somewhere because you're alive, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you're just not aware of where it's going. So when you say, "Oh, this popped in my mind," well, something you saw that reminded that,
Yeah.
Like imagine we have this extremely powerful device, this computer in our head. We are the programmers, and sometimes you just let it roll, just does whatever. And there's a process called mindfulness when you're supposed to get into this spiritual place where every thought that happens you're aware of. You never let your thought just do whatever it wants. If you can get to that, that's the next spiritual level. First is self-realization, and you realize I am me, and my mind is just a device that I'm using. This mind can run the body, and this mind is good for me to interact with this three-dimensional world. I'm not from here. You're not from here. The thing that we are is not from the three-dimensional space. But we need this spacesuit to interact with the three-dimensional space. So we are driving this meat puppet, learn how to talk, learn how to walk, and then now, this is our purpose. We are living in this three-dimensional world, driving this meat suit, and now we can interact. So if you call yourself a soul or a spirit, you can't do anything. But with this, I move the table.
Yeah.
My spirit can do that, but my body could. I can make the body do it. So you're driving this meat puppet. So what our purpose is, we are here. Everything that exists and was built in this world, right? All these things was an idea. And then
we materialize
it. So our job is in this three-dimensional world is all our ideas, whatever we want to build, art, architecture, whatever it is, we can build it. We use this thing to manipulate the three-dimensional world. Now, if you go back to the other side, what I was just saying, so here I am driving this three-dimensional puppet in this world, and first realizing that you're doing that. And the self-realization, realizing the dualism. So this is me. My mind is a separate thing. And now, next level, I have to control this mind. Completely control it. And the level is controlling the mind is called mindfulness. Mindfulness is a process that you always aware of what your mind is doing. Now, if you're always aware of what your mind is doing, because you always can control, because you see the thoughts, like, like if you're always aware of your thoughts, could you be depressed? No, because it's a choice. I decide what I think. People forgot that, but we have this free will. Nobody uses it.
That's true.
Nobody uses it. That's what free will means. Like, I decide what I think. It's 100% up to me. Nobody can decide what I think but me. And I'm in full charge of that. So how the hell people forgot and they just let their mind just do whatever?
That's so fascinating. And, I've always been trying to understand this perception because for me, emotions are chemistry. This is within our brain. These are just chemicals. These are results and products of our subconsciousness just reacting to certain things in a certain manner. And while I'm trying to understand this analytically, I'm very much struggling to achieve this sort of control that you're speaking of. So it's very interesting to hear this point from a person who, would you say that you achieved this emotional control over your thoughts?
It's more and more. It's very difficult. It's very difficult because that's a mastery. That's a master level of somebody who's really get on a high point of enlightenment. Because it's a really weird barrier that we like to feel human. Because the spirit has the spirit experience, but it also has the human experience, right? It's almost like they're kind of body snatchers. Yeah. If there was this animal on this planet and we just kind of like, we can use this creature to do the thing, right? And so sometimes you let the body do whatever. It's almost like you watch the body and your mind just do. And there's some, there are certain, like you were talking about the emotions. That's an interesting thing, for example. Like, there are some beauty, there are these human things, and I've been initiated by yogis. Initiation is a process when you reach a certain spiritual level, and it's called lifting the veil of Maya. Maya means the illusion, right? Yeah. So I was initiated by Tibetan yogis, and this is what they say before the initiation. Basically, they were, look, it's similar to when you're a kid, you believe in Santa Claus, right?
Yeah.
And then once you know that there's no Santa Claus, right? You can't go back and pretend there is.
Yeah.
Initiation into the path, when you reach that level, is sort of like lifting the veil. Means that you have a real understanding what this experience is, what this world is, and then you can't ever go back to be human. The normal human. So that means these emotions not going to drag you all over the world, and it's not, like you get to this different point when you always understand what you are.
This is such an interesting thought because it proves your previous point that you stated about the linear development.
Yes.
Because if you reach to that point, you can't go back, which is such an interesting.
Now there are events when the process of dying, there's a proof that we actually have an evolutionary possibility. There's a potential to go much further. And I don't know if people experiment with various psychedelics and whatnot.
Yeah.
That also can open certain doors, so you have certain understandings where we are in this state right now. We are bound to this linear thinking, but it doesn't have to be that way. Like, for example, in the process of dying, right? People ask me, like, did you see a movie going in front of you, and did you see your whole life? And it's like, yes and no. Yes, but no. Because when you say a movie, we went for this linear thing, like what happened in my life and I saw that. No. You're aware of all those things at the same time. Like, all of a sudden, your mind opens like an onion, and then everything happens because time stops.
Yeah.
And see, time, that is what we call the fourth dimension, but time is really the tricky one. Because time creates this experience. Because what you do really is look at the world right now, and you looked at the world a second ago, right? And a second ago something was different, so you recognize the difference. My hand is here and I is here. The reason you know that because you saw it now, and in the next minute, that low time that passed, you perceive that time, so therefore you compare this and this, right? And because we have memory, if you didn't have memory, then everything would be right now. But you have memory, so you remember that end was there, right? So there's this fuckery with time. But when you're dying, some of that time thing kind of comes to a screeching halt. Like time stops existing.
It's like our own singularity,
right?
Where everything
That's what
stops,
it is. That's
right?
what it is. So it's the world collapses into like there is a scary moment in there. The world collapses into this singularity, I guess you can say. You're aware of all the things at once, and then you're also aware of this physical handicap that again you're looking forward. And we think like all things coming this way. No. Your mind is an antenna and all comes from all direction. It's an omnidirectional mind. And we forget that for some reason. And now all of a sudden, now it's no longer linear.
Yeah.
It's coming from everywhere. And then everything you're aware of in the same time. So because this time thing disappeared. Like it doesn't matter when it happened, it just happened. So you're aware of this all the time. The next phase, a little bit scary, but fascinating. You have the moment of you cross the barrier. The barrier is when you also realize that everything you ever seen, everything you ever experienced did not happen outside of your head. It all happened in here. Because I actually don't see you. You don't see me. There are photons exploding into your retina, turning to digital information technically, because these are electrons traveling down on your neuropaths, right? Going to the translator in the mind. Samples and visualize it. So what we actually see, we don't have a fucking idea. We don't know what they see. Our mind assembles that. Now, that's the collapse. When in the process of dying, that the second phase is that, like all of a sudden you realize that, oh my God, I'm completely isolated because everything that I ever knew, every person I ever knew, everything that I know is all in here, not out there. That out there might not exist.
Wow.
That moment is like,
fascinating as well, though.
But it's extremely fascinating, shocking, scary in a way that because it occurred to me in that moment that it's a possibility that I'm completely alone and none of the things are real or existed ever. I dreamt all of this. That's a scary thought because there is something about that. We're not alone experiencing it. We're all looking for an answer, and there's this togetherness of all the creatures of the universe. And that when that stops, when you go, oh my God, this is a possibility that I alone dreamt and imagined all this. You know how big this universe is? As big as I can imagine. Literally.
Even
that's
more
it.
than that.
But that's it. No, actually, that is the limit. As big as you can imagine. Everything nothing can be bigger than you imagine. That's the limit.
Wow.
Right? And so all of a sudden, when it all collapses, that is the moment, like, holy shit, So, coming back from there, I have to say that what's practical. And what's practical to me, I'm here to manifest. I'm here to create things in this three-dimensional world. And I try to understand. I'm frustrated that I know that the human mind has its limitations. It's extremely frustrating. But it's the best we got. So, you know what I mean? Let's try to have some fun and I do my duty. And if our duty that maybe we are all connected and then we are just nerve endings on some super being, then my job is to collect information and have the best collection of information. Somebody have a good life so I can collect crazy shit for the collective. And that's kind of what, Now, as for a real answer, nobody knows that. I know that there's nobody, not even an alien,
who's actually aware of the specifics of
if they live in the three-dimensional universe, they cannot know. They cannot understand. No matter how advanced their technology, they can't.